Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hello, everybody. It's Tom Woods, and it's episode 2695 of The Tom Woods Show. And I'm very happy today to welcome two esteemed gentlemen who have been in the libertarian movement for, I'm not trying to make you feel old, but longer than I've been alive, probably. I don't know. It's Walter Block, who is a professor of economics at Loyola University New Orleans, and Jacob Hornberger, who is president of the Future Freedom Foundation. Both gentlemen are the authors of numerous books, and today we're going to be talking about the vexed question of Israel-Palestine from a libertarian perspective, and is there a particular stance that a libertarian per se ought to take on this matter? Now, we've decided in advance not to draft any formal resolution, but rather just debate the subject and follow it where it goes. And the only constraint will be that each debater will have, at a time, no more than 10 minutes. And once the 10-minute limit is reached, the other person will speak. They don't have to go the full 10 minutes, but that will be the only constraint. And there will be no interruptions by either debater of the other one. And the only interruption I will make is if somebody runs over the 10 minutes. So with that, I know that you gentlemen agreed who should go first, but I forget which person you decided on.
Jacob.
Okay, Jacob, so you're going to go first. All right, so your 10 minutes start right now.
It is my contention, Walter, during the course of this debate, that your repugnant stands and positions with respect to the Israeli government have greatly damaged the brand of principled libertarianism and Austrian economics, and that you bear 100% responsibility for the social ostracism that you are currently lamenting that you're experiencing in both of these movements. As you know, for many years, you have called yourself an anarcho-capitalist. You have told audiences of impressionable libertarians, young libertarians, that anarchy and capitalism are the solution to the woes of people all over the world. And indeed, you want to abolish the U.S. government, the Congress, the Supreme Court, the presidency. You want to abolish all the state governments, local governments. You want anarchy all over America. In fact, you want anarchy all over the world, with one exception. You want the Israeli government to remain standing over and above everybody else. Because you say that the Israeli government has a right to exist, unlike all the other governments of the world. But you're wrong. The Israeli government does not have the right to exist. Because you see, Walter, under libertarian principles, governments don't have rights. Only individuals have rights. And as Thomas Jefferson pointed out in the Declaration of Independence, when a government becomes destructive of liberty, tyrannical, it is the right or even the duty of people to abolish that government. And there's no question but that the Israeli regime is extremely tyrannical. It has conscription. It conscripts young people to join the armed forces and go and kill people as part of this killing campaign in Gaza against their will. How much more tyrannical can you get than that? You profess to favor freedom of speech as a libertarian. And yet in this regime, sole regime, monopoly regime in the world that you defend, they put people in jail for 5 years for daring to deny the existence of the Holocaust. How is that reconciled with a free society? As we all know, the Israeli government is a national security state. And a national security state is, by definition, omnipotent government because it wields omnipotent powers. And it's ironic that you call yourself an Austrian because Ludwig von Mises wrote this book where he condemned omnipotent government. The book had that title. And here you are defending an omnipotent government with the omnipotent power of assassination. Imagine snuffing a person's life out, which the Israeli government does regularly, without due process of law and without trial by jury. How much more tyrannical than that? You claim to be free market. You quote Ludwig von Mises and Milton Friedman. You say that you're not in favor of socialism. Really? In this regime that you defend its right to exist, it's riddled through with socialism. They have a socialist retirement program, a full-fledged socialist healthcare system. They own the transport systems, a socialized educational system with, again, conscription, mandatory attendance laws, where the Israeli government can indoctrinate those kids into supporting whatever it does. Indeed, the Israeli government, indirectly or directly, controls or owns 93% of the land in Israel. How's that reconciled with your purported devotion to private property rights? But of course, for many years, Walter, you have claimed to be open borders. You go to these conferences, I'm open borders. Jacob, I'm like you, I'm open borders. And you criticize the highway checkpoints in the American Southwest. You criticize the police state along the border, Donald Trump's Berlin Wall. All right and good. But why do you not do the same over there? They've got highway checkpoints, roads there in Gaza that require people to travel 7 hours to get to a 1 hour location. And why don't you condemn those? Why don't you condemn those Israeli boats, ships that are denying people the right to land boats on the beach there with food and water and supplies? That's a border there that you're defending is being controlled. Indeed, why don't you ever call for open borders between Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel, where people are free to cross from Gaza into Israel freely under open borders and open businesses there, but without being discriminated against? Because as you know, the Israeli government discriminates in favor of Jews when it comes to economic permits, consents, and so forth. How do you reconcile a civilized government when there's no equal treatment under law? But you do say that you're not in favor of genocide. You always make that clear. I'm not in favor of genocide in Gaza. Really? Let's examine the consequences, the natural consequences of your position. Here's your position. You say that the Hamas soldiers ensconce themselves in the civilian population under your warped version of self-defense. And that what they do, and that therefore the Israeli soldiers that fire bullets at them or drop bombs on them and kill all the civilians around there are acting morally and legally. And I've seen you on your podcast where you have your two little figurines and you say, look at my figurines, look at my figurines. And you put them on the chest of a Hamas fighter and you say, you can go ahead and shoot, Israeli soldier. You're not responsible for pulling that trigger. It's the Hamas fighter who's responsible for killing my two little figurines. But notice the natural consequence of what you're saying. In order to kill every single Hamas fighter, they have to kill every Palestinian in Gaza. And you even said that the Israeli government is pussyfooting around. That's your words. They're not killing enough people. Despite the fact they've killed, 70,000 people, you say it's not enough. But in order to kill every single Hamas fighter under your concept, they have to kill everybody there. Now, you may not call it genocide. Let's just call it extermination. And we can imagine a scenario where they're down to 100 people, okay? And one Hamas fighter left. And they come to Walter and they say, Walter, what do we do? We've killed 2 million people here. What do we do here? Do we kill these 100 people? There's only one Hamas fighter left. You know what you would say? Stop pussyfooting around and kill them all. But with one exception. That exception is that if those 100 people were Jews, I will guarantee you, you would sing a different tune. And who provides the weaponry for all this massacre in Gaza? Well, of course, it's the U.S. government. In fact, when you wrote your op-ed for the Wall Street Journal on this subject, you could have included one line, just one line, that said, I am an American libertarian and I oppose the U.S. government furnishing weaponry and money to the Israeli regime. You didn't do that. Instead, you did the exact opposite. You wrote, the West should continue supporting Israel. Walter, you are an American libertarian. You should be screaming to the rafters about the evil of the income tax and the IRS and confiscating people's income in order to fund this massacre as part of a foreign aid package. You should be highlighting your opposition to that thing instead of subtly, quietly saying nothing or little about it unless you're asked about it. So, in conclusion, if you had been honest about this whole thing, Walter, if you had gone to libertarian audiences and Austrian conferences and said, look, I don't deny that I'm abandoning libertarian principles and principles of anarchy and Austrian economics, that would have been one thing. I think people would have accepted that if you said, look, I'm Jewish, my loyalty is to the Israeli government, and I want you to know these are not libertarian or Austrian principles. I think people would have been accepting. But that's not what you've done. You've gone and told people that all of this is consistent with libertarianism and Austrian economics. And in my opinion, that's why you're being ostracized, and rightly so.
Hey, everybody, if you're like me, you've been watching the Fed inflate the dollar into oblivion while politicians bungle trade policy and rack up historic amounts of debt, and you're wondering, how do you protect what you've worked so hard to build? That's why I want to talk to you about Monetary Metals, a company doing something truly revolutionary with gold. We all know gold is a safe haven asset, but let's face it, most gold just sits there in a vault, not doing a whole lot. It holds its value over time, but it doesn't grow for you. What if I told you there's a way to not only own physical gold, but also earn a yield on it, paid in gold, every single month? Well, that's exactly what I do with Monetary Metals. I lease my gold with them and earn an annual yield around 4% in gold, not in paper currency. I keep my ounces, and every month I get more. So think about it. You still benefit from any price appreciation, like what we've been seeing in 2025 with gold pushing past all-time highs, and you also get paid more ounces of gold along the way. And that's what makes this model so exciting. It's a genuine breakthrough. For the first time in decades, gold is functioning as a yield-bearing asset, just like in the classical gold standard days. The Fed can print dollars, they can't print gold. It's time to start growing your wealth in ounces, not just hoping for the best with fiat. Go to monetary-metals.com/woods to learn more and see how you can start earning a gold income too. That's monetary-metals.com/woods. All right. Thank you, Jacob. Walter, your 10 minutes start now.
Right. Well, I've been taking notes on Jacob's discussion, and I congratulate him on making a very strong case against Israel. And I'm not going to reply now. I'm going to have my opening statement just as he had his opening statement. And in my next go around, after my turn comes up, I will then start to reply to what he was saying, although I will mention a few things that he mentioned. I'm a libertarian, and as a libertarian, the key for me is private property rights. And the grandfather or the godfather of libertarianism on private property rights is John Locke. And what John Locke says is, he who mixes his labor with the land first is the rightful owner. And I think Murray Rothbard supports that. I think all libertarians support that. I imagine Jacob also supports that the justification for property titles, in our view, is homesteading. Well, who homesteaded the land under contention? Not only the land in Israel, but the land in, I don't know where, Gaza, in the Samaria, East Jerusalem, and all the contended areas. And the answer is Israel, or rather Jews. There was no Israel then. The Jews have been there for, 3,500 years, something like that. And they've been homesteading. And they are the rightful owners of the land. Now, it's true they got kicked out by the Romans, by the Ottomans, and a lot of people kicked them out. But just because you get kicked out of your private property doesn't mean that you're not the rightful owner. You're not de facto the owner, but de jure, you should still be the owner. So what happened after the Jews got kicked out? You had the diaspora. The Jews went here, there, everywhere, and this country accepted them, and then they kicked them out. They went to another country. The wandering Jew is an aphorism that would describe this. But that doesn't mean that they lost their title. Now, it's true that the Arabs have been in the contested areas, but many, many fewer times, more like centuries rather than millennia. And I regard them as squatters. And what's the evidence for my contention? One bit of evidence for my contention is the Al-Aqsa Mosque sits above the Second Temple, and the Second Temple sits above the First Temple. So how do you know who was there first? The way you discern who was there first is who was in the bottom rung. And the Al-Aqsa Mosque is above the Second Temple, so the Second Temple was there first. And but different countries have different sports. One of the sports of Canada is hockey. A sport in the U.S. would be football. A sport in most of the rest of the world is soccer. You know what the sport is in Israel? Archaeology. They're continually digging here, there, everywhere. And what they find in the first foot or the first yard of dirt, they find Arab stuff. Coins, jewelry, whatever, a cloth. But then when you go down deep, you find Jewish stuff, which indicates that the Jews were there first for millennia. And therefore, if there's a dispute as to who is the rightful owner of the property, I say as a libertarian that the nod goes to the Jews. Now, Hans Hoppe says, well, you have to get a specific Jew to say that he owns that land. That's one of his criticisms. But I reject that because you can have communal property. Now, look, methodologically, I'm a methodological individualist. I'm not a methodological collectivist, but I am a political collectivist. Collectivism is not a dirty word. It's not like the F word. We do have partnerships. We have condominiums where groups of people own stuff. The native Indians, they didn't own stuff individually. They owned it as a tribe. So the Jewish tribe, I think, has a rightful ownership of these contested lands. One of the main contentions against Israel is that they're stealing Arab lands. Well, not so. So that's the first element of private property. The second one occurred in 1948 when the Israeli government was set up. And the Israeli government was set up in 1948, and I think either 5 or 7 armies attacked it, which was an offensive war. We libertarians are not for peace. We're not against violence. We're just against initiatory violence. We favor retaliatory or defensive violence. Well, the Jews were fighting a defensive war, not an offensive war, because these armies were coming in and attacking the Jews. And what happened was that the 5 or 7 armies, they sent out a message to the Arabs in Israel. And they said, look, get out, go away, take a vacation, go visit somebody else. Because if you stay there, it's going to be hard for us to slaughter all the Jews. And if you leave, we'll wipe them up in 2 weeks, and then you come back and everything will be hunky-dory. And the Jews pleaded with them to stay. They said, look, we can live together peacefully. They talk about, ethnic cleansing. But right now, Arabs are some 20% of the population. And they are judges, they're professors, they're lawyers, they're accountants, they're engineers. They even have political parties that are in the Knesset. So that argument against Israel, I think, is fallacious. So what happened is that they all left. Not all, about 1 million. There's a dispute as to how many. The best estimate is 800,000 or 900,000. They all left. And then they wanted to come back after Israel beat all those invading armies. And the Israelis said, forget about it, as we say in Brooklyn. You're not coming back. You were a traitor to us. You were aiding and abetting an enemy army or an enemy armies. Now, interestingly enough, at around the same time, around the same number of people, Jews, left Egypt and Syria and Lebanon and all the surrounding countries, Syria, and also it was also a little bit less than 1 million. Again, about 800,000, give or take. The historians debate about how many people there were. And what happened was that the Jews all left. They weren't traitors. They weren't guilty of any crimes. They were not aiding and abetting any alien enemies. They were just prosecuted there, and pogroms of the Jewish middle name. And they came to Israel, and Israel accepted them and integrated them. And what did the Arabs do with the Palestinians who left? They put them in, I don't know what you'd call them, refugee camps, concentration camps, and in order to show the cruelty of Israel. Look, these people have been there for generations, and look at how Israel is treating them. What should have happened, what might have happened theoretically, is a little switcheroo. About the same number of people. They each could have taken the other's property. The Jews take the property left by the Palestinians, and the Palestinians take the property of the Jews in Egypt and Syria and other places. But that didn't happen. So I don't think that there's any right of return. I think these people aided and abetted invading armies. And when you do that, you're a criminal. And I don't think Israel should accept those people back. Now, the third point in my 3-point plank, I hope I have another few minutes on this. Oh, wait, I can see the recording time. I do have a few more minutes. The third element is Israel committing genocide? And I say, yes, genocide is occurring in the Middle East, but not on the part of Israel, on the part of Hamas. Because what genocide is, to me, and I think I'm speaking correctly as to what the meaning of the word is attacking people because they are of a certain group and you want to get rid of them. And you're not talking about enemy soldiers, we're talking about civilians. Well, who did they attack on October 7th? They attacked at a musical festival. They attacked at Chabad. They attacked at Jewish settlements right near there. This was genocide. What they did was genocide. Now, Jacob mentioned my what do you call it? The two kids here, and I'm going to now do that. He did a good job of it, but I think I can do better because I have actual props. These are my two children, and here's my knife. It's a pen, so don't worry. And I'm going to
start wrapping up, Walter.
Oh, I'll have to continue this when it's next my turn.
Okay. Jacob, I have unmuted you, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, let's begin with the first point that Walter made about that the Jews mixed their labor with the land, and they're entitled to this property in perpetuity, and that they're just retaking what belongs to them. But there's a problem there, Walter, and that problem is that that's what courts are for. When somebody is claiming a piece of property that has been adversely held by another person, he goes to court to establish title. And that's what courts are for. You know that. You filed a lawsuit for defamation against the New York Times, showing that you believe in defamation laws, that believe in court system, and you, of course, in the court system that you want to abolish, supposedly as part of your anarchist philosophy. So under 3 legal principles, I believe that the Israelis would have lost. The Jews would have lost that court suit. And the courts were available during the British Mandate, as you know. The British courts were operating. They could have filed suit and said, this land belongs to us, and here is our proof. That's what courts are for, again, to show proof. And I think they know that they would have lost. And they would have lost on 3 legal principles. Adverse possession, which holds that when somebody is adversely holding possession of your property and you haven't done enough to claim the right to return to it, you've lost it. And the general adverse possession rule under the law is 10 years. And certainly you never file suit, or they never file suit for 10 years during the British Mandate. And then there's also the principle of laches and estoppel, that when a person has a right and doesn't claim it, and other people depend on that and rely on it, which is what the Palestinians did when they started building homes and establishing businesses and so forth, you lose that right by laches. And I think that's why they didn't file lawsuit. Now, you say, well, and the initiation of violence is wrong. It seems to me that rather than go to court, that's exactly what the Zionists did. They initiated violence to establish their ownership of this property. I mean, Israel was born in blood, sort of like Dexter. I don't think you can deny that. And when you say they left, the Palestinians left, like voluntarily abandoned their homes. Come on, Walter. Are you serious? When somebody's threatening you with death, when they're threatening you with killing, the natural attitude is, let's get out of here rather than get killed. And you say that on the genocide, let's not argue over the meaning of the term genocide. I mean, as you know, there's multiple organizations, including the United Nations, that have already said there's genocide taking place. Let's not argue over what the definition means. Let's just talk about the extermination of people, regardless of the race or whatever. There's no question that the Israeli government and you want to exterminate everybody in Gaza or get rid of them, one way or the other. And I want you to respond to my point, is that the logical consequence of your policy with your little figurines is to kill every single Hamas fighter because they're ensconced within the civilian population. Therefore, if you're going to kill every Hamas fighter, you have to kill every single person in Gaza. You may not want to call it genocide, fine, but let's call it extermination. The natural consequence of your policy is extermination. Now, there was clearly an attack there on October 7th, no question about it. I mean, a vicious, horrible terrorist attack, no question about it. Again, whether you want to call it genocide or not, to me is irrelevant. To me, it's murder or rape or whatever, totally unjustified. The question is what is done in response to that? You see, you have the same mindset as George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. Ironically enough, when they invaded Afghanistan, they took your same position. They said, not enough people. I mean, there's no upward limit on the number of Afghan people we can kill because we're defending ourselves. We're going after Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. And so these people were in the way. They're the figurines. They're your figurines in Afghanistan. And so they were killing mass numbers of Afghans. And we at the Future of Freedom Foundation were ardently opposing this, saying these are innocent people. What are you doing? You're placing no value on the life of these innocent human beings. Too bad. This is self-defense. We got to get Osama. And that's your same mindset. To heck with these people. We got to get Hamas. We got to, at all costs, even if it means the extermination of all these people. And finally, I would say to you that your mindset's also the same with respect to Dick Cheney and George W. Bush when you conflate Jews with the Israeli government. I find your mindset of conflation fascinating. These are two separate entities, Walter, that you know, conservatives do this a lot, right? Wingers here and some liberals, when they conflate the U.S. government and the American society. Like, we need to do this. We need to send foreign aid to Israel. We need to do that. Well, there's no we about it. The American nation is a separate entity from the U.S. government, just as the Jewish people are a separate entity from the Zionist government. So when you say the Jews had a right to come in, fine, come in and buy property, buy a home, establish a business. There's no reason why people can't live together. You yourself established that when you said that Arabs are living in Israel, right here in the United States. You have Muslims, Jews, Catholics, Christians, atheists, all living together without killing each other. Why not everybody live together there? Why not that as a solution? Why do you oppose that? Letting the Palestinians remain part of Israel, make it a greater part of Israel. Everybody live together. In fact, it's my understanding that before the Israeli government came into existence, Jews were doing fine in the Middle East. They were living in Iraq without any problems, and that, in fact, it was the Israeli government that initiated some terrorist strikes inside Iraq in order to propel Jews living in Iraq to move to Israel. So these are two separate entities. When you say the Jews mixed their labor with their land, that doesn't mean that the Israeli government mixed its labor with its land. You're talking about two completely separate things here, Walter. Now, Walter, I know you said that you were going to address the points that I raised in my opening statement, but I want to present a challenge to you in this debate. I want to challenge you right here publicly to call for the immediate dismantling of the Israeli government under your principles of anarchy. I want you to call for anarchy within Israel, right here now publicly, the immediate dismantling of the Israeli state. And if you're not willing to do that, and my hunch is that you're not willing to accept that challenge, then I challenge you to publicly, right now in this debate, renounce and denounce your support of anarchy and admit that it's not a viable paradigm or system that can be applied universally. I'm now finished.
Friends, if you care about your liberty and your financial freedom, you need to hear this. From October 10th to 12th, my friend Mikkel Thorup, host of the Expat Money Show, and who's been a guest on this program several times. In fact, he even came and joined us on the Tom Woods Cruise this year, is bringing together top experts from around the world for the Expat Money Online Summit. And it's completely free to attend. You'll learn how to legally protect your wealth, secure second residencies and citizenships, reduce your tax burden, and own property abroad, all to safeguard your freedom. This year's focus is Latin America, where opportunity is booming. Argentina is shifting to free markets under Javier Milei. El Salvador is undergoing a radical transformation, and Panama and Paraguay are offering simple residency programs. A Plan B is no longer optional, it's essential. Reserve your free ticket at expatmoneysummit.com. That's expatmoneysummit.com. All right, now, Walter.
I was in the midst of my puppet show. I guess this is a puppet show. Okay, here I am. I have my puppet show, and I'm the Hamas guy, and I've got a knife, and I'm going to kill you, dirty Jews, because you're evil, you're abomination, and you have a gun. You're more powerful than me, and you also have a child right behind you. And the question comes, should you shoot me? Well, if you shoot me right here, you shoot my two children who are totally innocent. We all acknowledge that. Or should you let me kill you and your children? And I think the libertarian answer, I mean, not just the libertarian answer, any answer that is not suicidal says, when you're being attacked, you're able to defend yourself. And that's what the Jews are doing there, or the Israelis are doing, the Jews too. Although I certainly agree with Jacob that Jews and Israel are not synonyms. So now you shoot me and my children die. And now the question comes, well, whose fault is it? And the answer is, even though it's your bullet, it's not your fault. It's my fault. So I don't know if there's 60,000 people dead. That's a Hamas figures, but let's stipulate that it's true arguendo. Who is responsible for those deaths? It's Hamas, not Israel. That would be my main point there. Jacob might not be aware of this, and now I'll start talking about some of my criticisms of his point, and I will respond to his dares or his suggestion that I call for the abolition of Israel and all that. But let me do it in order. Jacob might not be aware of this fact, but the average army, for every soldier they kill, and this is the average army over all of history, or all wars that we have statistics for. The average army, and this is every army, good army, bad army, all the average. For every soldier they kill, do you know how many civilians they kill? 9. 1 to 9. Do you know what the Israeli record is? For every soldier they kill 1.5 civilians. So let me put that in other numbers. It's 2 versus 18 versus 2 versus 3. The Israeli army is amazing. And I've criticized them for this. I said they're too gentle. They when they went in to Gaza, they should have gone in from the air where they have a comparative advantage. Instead, they lost 450 precious soldiers protecting Gazan non-combatants, Gazan civilians. The fault of those people who are dying is Hamas. Now, Jacob offers the following challenge or dare. He says, well, look, they ensconced themselves in there, and that means you have to kill all 2 million. I think I'm being accurate as to what he's saying. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. And my challenge to him is, whose fault would it be if Israel killed all 2 million? And my answer would be, it would be Hamas's fault. They put military weapons and rocket launchers and drone launches in the middle of a hospital. The Nazis didn't do that. Even the bloody Nazis never hid behind women's skirts and children here. These are my children. They never did that. This is a despicable group where they hide behind their own people. And I find that, highly problematic. Now, as to his challenge, yes, I favor the dissolution of the Israeli government as long as every other government dissolves as well. But I certainly don't favor the dissolution of only the Israeli government and not any other government. Another question comes up before I get into more of my responses. All of a sudden, I'm back there. The question comes, should the Palestinians have a state of their own? Well, the anarchist view is that we should each have a state. We should each be sovereign. How many states should we have? 8 billion, assuming there are 8 billion people. We should each have one for a customer. Everyone should have one. So should the Palestinians have one? Sure, the Palestinians should have one. But where? Well, not anywhere in the Middle East, because they are not the rightful owners of that stuff. What is it? Canada and France and Norway and a whole bunch of other countries are saying that we should have a Palestinian state. Yeah, sure. Let the Palestinian state be in the middle of Canada or the middle of Australia or the middle of Norway or anywhere else like that. If these hypocrites were serious about a Palestinian state, they would allow people in there. Okay, now I want to start talking a little bit about the issues that Jacob raised in criticism of me. The first one is open borders. Yes, I'm in favor of open borders. And I think Jacob agrees with me on this. And there should be no barriers. However, there are two problems with open borders. One of them is there are rapists and murderers out there. We don't want murderers and rapists out there to come in. So we have to have some sort of a protection against murderers and rapists coming in. And what I say in a whole series of articles, I forget whether I have a book on that or not, I say the following: look, let's privatize every square inch of the country. And then all the waterways, all the roads, all the land. And now if somebody comes in, they have to come in with permission. And if they come in with permission, and the host is responsible for their behavior, well, then that'll solve the problem. So the libertarian answer is how to resolve open borders with safety is private property rights. I hate to be, what is it, where you keep repeating yourself, private property rights, private property rights, private property rights. But if you're a libertarian and all you say is private property rights, you're going to be correct on 90% of the issues, because private property rights, we live and die by private property rights. And the private property rights are very, very important. Now, Jacob says, well, there's such a thing as adverse possession in laches, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, in estoppel. We're now talking about statutes of limitations. Statutes of limitations law. And I, as a libertarian, am against statute of limitations law. Whether it's 10 years or 50 years or 100 years, I'm against that. Instead, I favor what I call, natural statute of limitations. The burden of proof is always on the, the plaintiff. Possession is 9/10 of the law. But if you go back and you can prove it from 2,000 years ago, well, then I think you have a case. Look, what should have happened in 1865 when slavery was ended is that the slave owners should have been punished. And the punishment should have been that they would be enslaved by the ex-slaves. And what would happen with their property? The property would go to the ex-slaves. Well, let's say there were 10 slaves on this plantation. Right now, there's some white guy in Louisiana who owns that plantation. And there's some black guy in Harlem who can prove that his great-great-grandfather was a slave on that plantation. Well, he should get that 1/10 of the plantation. So, and yet it's 150 years ago. And according to Jacob's understanding of libertarianism, that couldn't happen because laches or adverse possession or estoppel or whatever would call a halt to that because 150 years is way too long. Well, I think that's unlibertarian. Jacob and I now disagree on a libertarian issue. To me, an artificial number of years, 50 years, 100 years, just artificial and got nothing to do with justice. The question is, can you prove something? And I think the proof is all over. As I talked about archaeology and where the first temple is and the second temple and the Al-Aqsa Mosque and all that, I think it's very clear that they could have proved it. Should they have gone to the British court? The British court? Are you kidding me? I used to have a full head of hair before I heard the British court, and I pulled it all out. I mean, that's ridiculous. British court, indeed. The British court was killing Haganah and Irgun and people like that who were defending Jews. And then he says that the Jews were fine in, Egypt and Syria. Has he never heard of pogroms? In this article that he talks about that me and my co-author Alan Fruderman put in the Wall Street Journal, we talked about the pogrom of 1928. There was no peace. I mean, the Jews were, evil. We got to get rid of the Jews. He acts as if he never heard of a pogrom,
Walter, you're at 15 seconds.
I yield. I yield to Jacob.
Okay, let me address this self-defense concept because it's exactly the concept that George W. Bush and Dick Cheney used in Afghanistan that they were defending as they were killing all these innocent Afghans. That's Walter's rationale. It's the exact same rationale. And it's not self-defense. That the 9/11 attacks took place. It was completed. And when Osama bin Laden is ensconced in Afghanistan, he's no longer attacking the buildings on 9/11. It's a completed terrorist strike. And now it just becomes a police action, trying to capture him and bring him to justice because terrorism is a criminal offense. And under our system of civilized government, we don't even try to kill the malefactor, the person suspected. We try to bring him to justice. That's our system, Walter, bringing people to justice, not vengeance. I'm no biblical scholar, but I think God said that vengeance belongs to him, not to the Israeli government, not to George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. And so it's the same with this Israeli attack. Once the attack took place on October 22nd, it was completed, it was done. The people that fought back during that attack were defending, self-defense. But once the fighters returned to Israel, they're in the same position as Osama bin Laden. It's not self-defense anymore. It's now vengeance. It's now going after these people, but in a legitimate sense, to try to capture them, arrest them, and bring them to justice, to trial for the criminal acts that they did. And so by simply saying self-defense is ridiculous. It's not self-defense when you're trying to kill somebody. Let me give you an example of this. Suppose a bank robber robs a bank and kills 50 bank employees. They're lying dead on the floor there. He escapes and heads a few blocks down to an office building. And he's ensconced in the office building with 50 employees of the bank. The cops don't go in there and say, we have a right to kill him here and bomb the whole building so that we can kill everybody. That is what Walter would say if they were Palestinians, that just bomb the whole building and kill that suspected bank robber. No, the cops sit there and negotiate. They try to figure out a way to save his life too, to bring him to justice. That's what legitimate criminal defense is all about. For Walter to say, oh, it's self-defense with my little figurines. Yes, Walter, believe it or not, the person who pulls the trigger is responsible for the killing. The person who drops the bomb is responsible for the killing because he is not being attacked at that moment. Now, if the shooter is attacking at that moment, attacking Israel or whatever, you got a whole different situation. When the Israeli government bombs these hospitals, it's not because the terrorists are over there striking in Israel. It's because they're seeking to kill the Hamas fighter, not bring him to justice. That's not self-defense. Let me say this also. If there were 2 million people in Gaza that were not Palestinians, but they were Jews, you would be taking a whole different line here. If they came to you and said, what do we do? You would say, there's no way we can kill those innocent Jews. They're not responsible for this. We need to figure out a way to bring these guys to justice through intelligence, wait them out, sit them out, no matter how long it takes. But you would place a higher priority on the lives of those Jews than you would on seeking vengeance against those fighters that had wreaked such horrific damage in Israel. We can't divorce also, you take the same line as Bush and Cheney by saying history starts with those attacks on October of 2022. But history doesn't start there. You always have to look at motive. What motivates people to do things? And don't hit me with you're justifying the attack business like Cheney and Bush did after the 9/11 attacks. Motive is not justification. And when you look at the history of what the Israeli government has treated these people, put them in an open-air penitentiary for generations and into perpetuity, then you can start to understand, my gosh, no wonder people are so angry and filled with rage that would motivate them to do such a horrific act. Again, I challenge you. Forget the two-state solution. Why can't everybody live together in one nation? We have people of diverse religions living here, Walter. They're not killing each other. I don't see you killing me. I'm a Christian. You're a Jew. I don't see you killing me. I don't see Muslims killing Arabs and whatever, Jews. Why can't everybody live together? And you made the same mistake when you referred to that. Will you call for the abolition of Israel? Israel and the Israeli government are two separate entities, Walter. The government's different. And thank you for acknowledging that anarchy is not a legitimate paradigm. I've been saying that for decades, that limited government is the only thing that works. And the minute you say that anarchy will only work if everybody else has anarchy, you have destroyed your support of the anarchy paradigm. And you need to stop calling yourself an anarcho-capitalist. Let me hit you with one more challenge. What 3 governments in the world, in addition to the Israeli government, do you say have a right to exist? Because my understanding always has been under your anarchy paradigm, no government has a right to exist except the Israeli government. I'd be curious, what 3 other governments would you say have a right to exist? Finally, it's easy for you to say that you don't believe in this legal doctrine or that legal doctrine, but hey, we're a nation that operates under the rule of law. And as I understand it, most regimes, I'm not a foreign law expert, but the law of adverse possession is applied through centuries. It has developed for good reasons. And so is estoppel and laches for good reasons. That somebody can't just sit back and say, I don't need to do anything to claim ownership. And people are building homes there and building businesses. And he watches all this, a 50-story building go up and then say, oh, I'm now here to claim my right to these buildings. The law is not going to permit you to do that. And again, why not litigate? It's easy, cavalier for you to say, oh, the British courts would not have been fair. Well, I think just because a British government is unfair doesn't mean the courts are going to be unfair. The tribunals are going to be unfair. But isn't going to court much better than initiating violence and force? You went to court against the New York Times. You didn't go up there and start killing them for defaming you. You used the court system, and that's what should have been done. Finally, you've also destroyed the case for open borders. You're not an open borders advocate. You're a government-controlled borders advocate. That's what you mean by saying we got to protect the nation from the rapists and the murderers. You're using that to justify Israeli government obstructions on those highways and roads and keeping boats from coming in with food and supplies. Come on, Walter. But tell me about the state borders here in the United States. I don't see any government restrictions on those borders. Every day, hundreds of thousands of cars cross from Maryland into Virginia, and they can include rapists, murderers, Muslims, Jews, Catholics, Christians, terrorists, illegal immigrants, drug dealers, and the like. And we have open borders. That is the legitimate open borders position. That's the position I contend is the right position. Free movements of goods, services, and people across borders. You're a government-controlled border man, which means you believe in a police state to control that border, which is what we have along the border, to protect you and keep you safe from all the murders and rapists that you're scared to death of. In conclusion, Walter, I think that the hypocrisy that you have engendered with your positions on the Israeli government issue in the context of libertarianism are the reason why you're being ostracized. I would recommend you look in the mirror and you take a good hard look at your positions. I think if you do that, you will realize that you're being ostracized for a reason, and it's a good reason. Thank you very much.
Hey everybody, let's take a minute to thank our sponsor, Persist SEO. If you're getting buried by your competition online, then build your brand, your reputation, and your lead flow with digital marketing by Persist SEO. If you're a small local business trying to compete against large companies in the service industry, then increase your visibility with Persist SEO. What if you have low or no leads coming in on a consistent basis? Well, then website search engine and conversion optimization can help move the needle to a more prosperous business model for you. Are you tired of cold calling and networking? Use your website as a lead generation engine. What if you're not showing up for your services in the search engines? Well, get found with Persist SEO Expert Search Engine Optimization. All you have to do is call 770-580-3736 or visit them at ineedseo.help for a free website audit and consultation. That's 770-580-3736 or ineedseo.help. All right, so Walter, you have the last word.
I find this problematic because he makes so many charges, and it's easy to make a charge and it's hard to refute them. It takes a long time to refute fallacy, but I'll try my best. There's a disanalogy between a bank robber running into a house with a whole bunch of innocent people and what Hamas is doing. First of all, on October 8th, right after October 7th, it was dancing in the streets in Hamas, in Gaza. So it's not at all clear that each and every person in Gaza was so innocent. But let's suppose, but the point is that they were captured. Whereas I have this theory called negative homesteading. The idea is if a lightning bolt hits me and I have a magic thing to push the lightning bolt onto you, may I do it? And my answer is no. The first positive homesteading is whoever grabs the property is the owner. Negative homesteading is you got to keep your misery. Well, there's a disanalogy between the Gazans who are captured in effect by Hamas and the innocent people in this building that Jacob mentioned. I also wanted to mention the open air prison. Why is it an open air prison? Because the people keep coming over with suicide bombing and bombing. That's why it's an open air prison. If Israel had its way, Gaza would have been the Hong Kong of the Middle East. Hamas had a lot of money, and what did they do with that money? Did they build desalination plants, hotels, houses? No, they built tunnels and they built weapons to kill Jews. I think that Jacob would benefit if he read the Hamas Constitution. And the Hamas Constitution, he keeps saying, well, we all get along well here. Why can't they get along well there? Because Hamas Constitution is to kill all Jews. And not just the ones in Israel. I'm on their list. And let me mention just a few other things. He mentioned Holocaust denial. It's true, Israel has that, and namely, Holocaust denial is a crime in Israel, as it is in Canada and in pretty much all of Europe, and I oppose that. So I don't favor everything the Israeli government does. I don't favor the draft. I think they would have done better without a draft. In the 1948 war, it was fought not so much by the IDF. It was more the Haganah and Lehigh and the Stern Group, and they didn't draft anyone. Those were private defense agencies. So I think that Israel would do better with that. Another issue is, should we have allies? Should the U.S. government have allies? Or should we not have allies? Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with, on libertarian grounds, with having allies. Jacob says we should abide by the rule of law. No, we should abide by libertarian law. According to the rule of law, you should put people in jail for using heroin. But I'm sure Jacob and I both agree that you shouldn't put people in jail for using heroin or prostitution or whatever it is, any victimless crime. So we should adhere to libertarian law, not to government law. In closing, he keeps mentioning that I'm being ostracized. Well, he's not ostracized. Well, he is sort of ostracizing me because he refuses to publish anything in FFF, Future of Freedom Foundation, even where he agrees with me. So he's sort of a little ostracizing me, but he's not really ostracizing me because he agreed to debate. Hans Hoppe won't debate me. Lou Rockwell won't debate me. Tom DiLorenzo won't debate me. There are a lot of people that won't debate me. So I'm very grateful to Jacob for at least debating me. But I sort of don't like his attitude. His attitude is, Walter is a bum. Walter is not really a libertarian. Whereas my attitude, hopefully, I don't know if it came through, but the way I mean it is, look, we have a difficult issue here. And we're libertarians. We should talk about it. Look, the issue of abortion is easily as important as this issue. There are probably more people's lives at stake in abortion law than in the Middle East. And yet Murray Rothbard was pro-choice and Ron Paul was pro-life. Nobody ostracized anyone. They were friends. No one else ostracized either of them. So what's this ostracizing mishigas craziness in Yiddish? Why should we not think together and reason together? This is a complicated issue. Jacob has made some good points. I wish I had more time. I think I could refute them all, but I can't because I'm running out of time now. But the point is that these are tough issues. Look, it's not non-libertarian to ostracize. We believe in free association. You don't want to associate with somebody, fine, there's no crime. But the Mises Institute and the Ron Paul Institute and the FFF and the Libertarian Institute also believe that they're scholars. But they're not scholars. But Jacob is a scholar. He is willing to debate me, and I thank him for that. But a scholar doesn't say, well, look, you disagree with me on one issue, and therefore we're not going to speak to you and we'll have nothing to do with you again. That's not scholarship. Scholarship is you sit down and you talk and you reason and you think about these things and you write about them and then you have a rejoinder. That's what scholarship is. And I wish Jacob didn't have that attitude of animosity toward me. I'm just doing the best I can. We're all God's creatures. I'm an atheist, but what the heck, I can say that. We're all doing the best we can. I might not have 100% of the truth, and Jacob might not have 100% of the truth, but I think the proper attitude that we should have toward each other is, let's reason together. Let's think together. This social ostracism is problematic. I just wanted to mention one last thing about the defamation. I believe that defamation is legitimate. Yet I sued the New York Times for defaming me. What I said was I was favoring voluntary slavery, and these rascals, they quoted me as favoring actual slavery, which is an abomination. And I just had to come up with some way that I could get around that defamation is not a crime under libertarianism. And I came up with, and I wrote about this. I'm sure Jacob didn't read this, otherwise he wouldn't be criticizing me on it. Well, maybe he would, because he doesn't think that my reasoning was good, but it was that the New York Times is part of the ruling class. And there's a different rule that we libertarians should have for members of the ruling class than we should have for each other. And the New York Times is a spokesman for the evil government. Therefore, I was justified in suing them for defaming me. And they misquoted me. They said I favored actual slavery. Come on, actual slavery is an abomination. And I was talking about voluntary slavery. What's voluntary slavery? My son, God forbid, has a horrible disease. It costs $50 million to save him. And Jacob is very rich. And he's $50 million is nothing for him. And we make a deal. I come to Jacob's house and I'm his slave, and I pick cotton for him. I give him economics lessons, and he could whip me and even kill me because killing a slave was a legitimate thing. And yet we each gain because I value my son's life more than my freedom or my own life, and he values my servitude more than the 50 million, which is chump change to him. So I was telling the New York Times about this, and they quoted me saying that I support actual slavery. Now, look, there's a dispute among libertarians on voluntary slavery, but that's sort of an in-house dispute. So I reject Jacob's claim that I'm contradicting myself when I talk about defaming or rather suing the New York Times. I disagree with his point about open borders. Look, I don't think it's unlibertarian to say that every inch of the country should be privatized. What's unlibertarian about that? I mean, private property rights. Everyone should, every square inch, including the waterways and the roads and everything, should be privatized. And now if somebody comes in, they have to be invited. Otherwise, they're a trespasser. I don't understand why that, to say that is to deny that I'm still an open borders person. Yes, the Israeli government is evil. It shouldn't exist. All governments are evil. They shouldn't exist. But I think Jacob wants to say, well, only the Israeli government should disband. Why only the Israeli government? Why pick on just one government? This business with genocide, yes, the Israeli bullets are shooting into, let's say, 60,000 people. Let's call them innocent people for argument's sake. But whose fault is that? It's not the fault of the person who's shooting. It's the fault of the person who is grabbing them and using them as shields. And again, even the Nazis don't do that. And Hamas
30 seconds, Walter.
And Hamas is doing that. In my last 30 seconds, I want to thank Tom and I want to thank Jacob. This is a very important thing that we talked about this because so few libertarians are willing to discuss it. And I thank you too for doing that.
All right. And with that, we will call it quits. And I will in turn say thank you to both gentlemen, Walter Block, Loyola University New Orleans, Jacob Hornberger, Future Freedom Foundation, FFF.org. Thanks to you both.
Take care.
Oh, and I beg your pardon. I have poor Jacob's trying to thank me and I have him muted like an idiot.
Yeah, I want to thank you for hosting it. Thank you, Walter, for your time and for the debate.
Excellent. Thanks to both of you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.